Today, our discussion will encompass the comprehensive genealogy presented in the Bible, tracing the lineage from Adam and Eve to the era of Jesus. At the pinnacle of the family tree are Adam and Eve, the acknowledged first humans created by God, as depicted in the Bible. Their first two children, Cain and Abel, are well known. Tragically, Cain's jealousy leads to Abel's demise. Adam and Eve later welcomed a third son, Seth, marking the continuation of the biblical story. The Bible suggests that Adam and Eve had numerous unnamed sons and daughters. Following tradition, it is inferred that Seth likely married one of his sisters, and subsequent generations presumably continued the practice of intermarrying with cousins and so forth. Seth becomes the father of Enosh, and after 7 generations, we encounter the pivotal figure of Noah in the biblical story. Noah, renowned for constructing the ark and gathering animals to endure the great flood, becomes a central character. During the cataclysm, everyone on earth perishes, with the exception of Noah, his wife, and their 3 sons along with their wives, 8 individuals in total, entrusted with the task of repopulating the world. Although the Bible omits the names of Noah's wife and daughters-in-law, his 3 sons are identified as Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Shem had 5 sons, Ham had 4, and Japheth had 7, resulting in a total of 16 grandsons for Noah. For the most part, the names of these 16 grandsons align with nations that would eventually emerge in the Near East. For instance, Asher corresponds to Assyria, Mizraim to Egypt, and Javan to Greece. However, the biblical narrative centers on the lineage of Shem's son, Arphaxad. His descendant, Selah, fathered Eber. 5 generations later, Terah, residing in Mesopotamia, which is modern-day Iraq, enters the scene. Terah has 3 sons, Abraham, Nahor, and Haran. Haran passes away in Mesopotamia, prompting the remaining family, including Haran's son Lot, to migrate to the land of Canaan, God's promised land for Abraham and his descendants, corresponding essentially to present-day Israel and Palestine. Terah dies en route in Syria, and Nahor chooses to establish his residence in that region. Nevertheless, Abraham and Lot proceed to Canaan. Abraham's principal wife is Sarah, revealed later as his half-sister, likely born of a different mother within Terah's lineage. Struggling with infertility, Sarah encourages Abraham to wed her servant Hagar, resulting in the birth of Ishmael. However, miraculously at the age of 90, Sarah herself bears a son named Isaac, who becomes Abraham's primary heir. Following Sarah's passing, Abraham enters a 3rd marriage with Keturah, and they have several sons, including Midian. Isaac, marrying Rebekah, the granddaughter of Nahor, and thus his first cousin once removed, fathers 2 sons, Jacob and Esau. Jacob, later known as Israel, emerges as the progenitor of the Israelites. This familial lineage, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, is collectively recognized as the trio of patriarchs or fathers. Before delving into the Israelites, let's explore some other groups in the Bible with distant ties to them. Once the kingdoms of Israel and Judah are established, their closest neighbors include the realms of Moab, Ammon, and Edom. The Moabites and Ammonites trace their ancestry back to Lot, while the Edomites are descendants of Esau. Further to the south, the Midianites, stemming from Midian, and the Arabs, descendants of Ishmael, occupy the region. Islamic tradition posits Muhammad's lineage from Ishmael, while Jesus is regarded as a descendant of Abraham's son, Isaac. This shared ancestry underpins the classification of Judaism, Christianity, and Islam as Abrahamic religions. It's worth noting Job at this juncture. Although the Bible doesn't precisely clarify his connection to the family tree, he is generally believed to have a place somewhere in the period of the patriarchs. Let's now focus on Jacob and his 12 sons. Jacob enters matrimony with 2 sisters, Leah and Rachel, who happen to be the daughters of Laban, Rebekah's brother. Consequently, Laban is both Jacob's uncle and his 2 wives' first cousin. Jacob also fathers children with Leah and Rachel's maids, Bilhah and Zilpah. Each of Jacob's 12 sons serves as the progenitor of one of the 12 tribes of Israel, with Levi and Judah emerging as the most significant. Before we proceed, it's crucial to highlight Joseph, Jacob's firstborn from his favored wife Rachel. Joseph, famously sold into slavery by his brothers, finds himself in Egypt, ultimately rising to the position of second in command under the pharaoh. The specific pharaoh in the Joseph narrative remains unnamed in the Bible, but the context hints at a potential connection to the 15th dynasty of Egypt. This period coincides with the rule of the Hyksos, a Semitic group, over the Nile Delta. During Joseph's governance in Egypt, a famine in Canaan compels Jacob's entire family to relocate to Egypt, where they are reunited with Joseph. Notably, Joseph becomes the father of Ephraim and Manasseh in Egypt, leading to the classification of the tribe of Joseph as two distinct tribes, Ephraim and Manasseh, in the biblical account. During their time in Egypt, the Israelites multiply, eventually facing enslavement. This sets the stage for the introduction of the next central figure in the biblical narrative, Moses, hailing from the tribe of Levi. Chosen by God, Moses leads the Israelites out of Egypt, embarking on a journey back to the promised land of Canaan. Assisted by his brother Aaron, who assumes the role of the first Israelite high priest, Moses orchestrates the Exodus, a pivotal event in which the Israelites escape from Egypt. This narrative encompasses renowned occurrences such as the parting of the Red Sea and the reception of the Ten Commandments from God. Once more, the Bible omits the name of the pharaoh involved in the Exodus, leaving scholars to consider Thutmose III or Ramesses II as the most probable candidates, depending on whether one adheres strictly to the timeline or takes contextual cues into account. Following their escape, the Israelites endure 40 years of wandering in the desert, during which Moses passes away. Joshua, from the tribe of Ephraim, assumes leadership and guides the Israelites into the land of Canaan. There, they conquer the indigenous people, and the territory is divided among the 12 tribes. Initially, each tribe governs itself, with judges emerging periodically to lead coalitions when necessary. Among the renowned judges of this era are Gideon, Deborah, and Samson. During this period, the Israelites express a desire for a monarch, leading to the anointing of Saul from the tribe of Benjamin as king by the prophet leader Samuel, who hails from the tribe of Levi. It's noteworthy that, akin to Moses, Samuel is referred to as a prophet, a figure who receives divine messages and conveys them to the people. Saul becomes the inaugural king of the Israelites, but God becomes dissatisfied with him. Subsequently, Samuel is instructed to clandestinely anoint David, a boy from the tribe of Judah, as Saul's successor. In his youth, David serves as a musician in Saul's court and gains popularity among the people for his courageous feat in slaying the giant Goliath. In due course, Saul becomes envious, prompting David to seek refuge in hiding. Despite maintaining a close friendship with Saul's son, Jonathan, and entering into marriage with Saul's daughter, Michal, David faces the necessity of concealing himself. Eventually, both Saul and Jonathan perish in battle, and David ascends to the throne. Initially reigning over his own tribe, David's rule expands when Saul's son, Ishbosheth, becomes king over the rest of Israel. However, David ultimately triumphs over Ishbosheth, consolidating his kingship over all 12 tribes. Designating Jerusalem as his capital, David's reign is marred by a notorious incident where he succumbs to desire for a woman named Bathsheba, orchestrating her husband's demise to marry her. Through this union, a son named Solomon is born, destined to become the subsequent king. Before progressing further, it's noteworthy to mention that the Bible dedicates an entire book to one of David's great-grandmothers, Ruth. Originally from the kingdom of Moab, she stands out as one of the 4 women cited in the Gospel of Matthew as an ancestor of Jesus. As per the biblical account, Solomon's reign spans 40 years, and he is revered as the wisest individual in history. Credited with composing a significant portion of the Book of Proverbs, Solomon stands in contrast to his father David, who is acknowledged for many psalms. Of paramount importance, Solomon is attributed to the construction of the inaugural temple in Jerusalem, initiating the project in the 4th year of his reign and completing it 36 years before his death. Following Solomon's demise, Israel undergoes a division into 2 distinct kingdoms. His son Rehoboam assumes the rule over the southern kingdom of Judah, while Jeroboam, hailing from the tribe of Ephraim, governs the northern kingdom of Israel. It's worth noting that from this point onward in the chronology, most individuals on the timeline are associated with specific dates on the chart. These dates provided are not birth and death dates. Rather, they indicate the periods during which kings reigned or priests served. Take note of the year 930 BC, which marks the commencement of the reigns of both Rehoboam and Jeroboam. This specific year is a crucial anchor point in biblical chronology, widely agreed upon by scholars, both religious and secular alike. The significance lies in the fact that, from this juncture onward, the dates on the timeline, along with numerous individuals, can be cross-verified using sources from both within and outside the Bible. For instance, in 1 Kings chapter 14, there is mention of an Egyptian pharaoh named Shishak who rules concurrently with Rehoboam and Jeroboam. Egyptian records confirm the existence of a pharaoh named Shoshenq, aligning with the biblical time frame, as he reigned from 943 to 922 BC, a corroborated historical match. Now let's delve into the left side of the chart, focusing on the timeline. The year 930 BC marks the start of the section, denoted as historical dates, a date universally accepted. Above this, we've incorporated speculative dates labeled as Christian literalist dates, intended for individuals interpreting the Bible literally or seeking internal biblical references for event timelines. Recall the number 36? Counting back 36 years from 930, we arrive at 966 BC, the presumed commencement year for Solomon's temple construction. Further calculations can be made by referencing specific biblical numbers. For instance, 1 Kings 6 verse 1 mentions that Solomon initiated temple construction 480 years after the Exodus. Taking this literally places the Exodus in 1446 BC. Exodus 12 verse 40 notes, "The Israelites spent exactly 430 years in Egypt. Considering Jacob's age at the time of their descent to Egypt, 130 years in Genesis 47 verse 9, Jacob's birth is dated to 2006 BC. Since Isaac was 60 when he fathered Jacob, and Abraham was 100 when he had Isaac, Abraham's birth is estimated at 2166 BC. Progressing on to Genesis 11 numbers, we infer that Abraham was born 292 years after the flood. Assuming a literal interpretation, the flood would have transpired in 2458 BC. Noah, being 600 at the flood, is born 1056 years after Adam and Eve, yielding a creation date of Adam and Eve at 4114 BC, according to Genesis 5. Interesting, right? Christian literalists may vary slightly in their dating methodologies, resulting in some discrepancies. However, as a broad generalization, interpreting the Bible literally tends to place the estimated date of creation around 4000 BC. Let's get back to Rehoboam and Jeroboam, tracing the lineage down the family tree, starting with the northern kingdom of Israel. According to the Bible, Jeroboam is succeeded by his son, Nadab, but a shift occurs when a usurper named Baasha takes over, succeeded by his son Elah. The stability further wanes as Elah is assassinated by Zimri, only for Zimri to be overthrown by Omri. In a contentious period, Tibni, likely a relative of Zimri, contends for kingship but is ultimately defeated by Omri, who establishes a new capital city at Samaria. Although Omri's biblical mention is brief, he holds significance as the earliest king in either Israel or Judah, with both his name and achievements validated by external, non-biblical sources. The corroborating source is the Mesha Stele, crafted around 840 BC in the neighboring kingdom of Moab. Adding to this, Assyrian records from a later period employ Omri's name to refer to the entire kingdom of Israel, designating it as the land of the house of Omri instead of using the term Israel. Following Omri, Ahab assumes the throne, and the Bible extensively details mostly negative aspects of his reign. A significant influence on his actions is attributed to his wife Jezebel, a Phoenician princess. The prophet Elijah is active during their rule, coinciding with a period of conflict between the kingdom of Aram Damascus, present-day Syria, and Israel. This historical conflict is documented not only in the Bible, but also in various external sources. Notably, the Tel Dan Stele stands out as one of the most crucial archaeological discoveries in relation to this conflict. Commissioned by King Ahaziah of Aram Damascus, the Teldon Stele recounts his triumph over Jehoram, the son of Ahab, and also over Ahaziah from the house of David, providing the sole extra-biblical reference mentioning David. It's crucial to note that while this reference acknowledges David's descendant Ahaziah, it lacks any biographical details about David himself, merely noting that Ahaziah was defeated by Hazael. Resuming the narrative of the kings of Israel, the Bible informs us that Jehoram was succeeded by Jehu, potentially a member of the house of Omri from a different lineage. Jehu holds a distinctive position as the sole king of either Israel or Judah for whom we possess a contemporaneous depiction. An Assyrian record known as the Black Obelisk portrays him bowing down to Shalmaneser III. This suggests that Israel became an Assyrian vassal, likely in exchange for assistance against Hazael. Jehu is succeeded by 4 of his descendants before the decline sets in. A series of 5 final rulers leads to the complete destruction of Samaria in 722 BC by the Assyrians. According to the Bible, King Shalmaneser V accomplishes this conquest. The text also references a king So of Egypt around the same period, likely Osirkon IV, the last pharaoh of the 22nd dynasty, who rules just before the ascendancy of the Cushite pharaohs. Let's revisit the kings of Judah, recognizing that unlike the northern kingdom, the southern kingdom remains under the continuous rule of a single dynasty, the House of David. Although there is at least one intermarriage with the house of Omri, as evidenced by Rehoboam's great-grandson Jehoram, who weds Athaliah, the daughter of King Ahab. Following the deaths of Jehoram and their son Ahaziah, Athaliah seizes the throne of Judah, eliminating all other contenders. Nevertheless, Ahaziah's infant son, Joash, is rescued and concealed until he reaches the age of 7. Assisted by the high priest, a plot unfolds to overthrow Athaliah, culminating in Joash ascending to the throne and thus preserving the house of David from extinction. 5 generations later, Hezekiah emerges as one of the pivotal kings of Judah. His reign occurs shortly after the fall of Samaria, exposing Judah to the threat of the Assyrians. During this period, Sennacherib rules as the king of Assyria, but his attempts to conquer Judah falter, influenced in part by the rise of the formidable pharaoh Taharka in Egypt, mentioned in the Bible as Tirhakah, the king of Cush. Hezekiah's strategic planning, coupled with the fortuitous geopolitical developments, contributes to the resistance against Assyria. The Bible notes Hezekiah's initiatives, including the construction of new walls and an underground water tunnel into Jerusalem. Archaeological discoveries validate these historical accounts. Additionally, the prophet Isaiah, a member of the royal family and Hezekiah's father-in-law, plays an active role during this critical period. Hezekiah is succeeded by Manasseh and Amon, both characterized as evil in the biblical narrative. The succession takes an unexpected turn with the ascent of Josiah, a young boy, to the throne. Josiah, described as a righteous ruler, brings prosperity to Judah, coinciding with the decline of Assyria and the rise of Babylon. Hilkiah was the high priest during Josiah's reign and a descendant of Zadok, the original high priest in Solomon's era. The oldest copy of a biblical text ever found dates to around the time of Josiah and Hilkiah. It is part of the Ketef Hinnom scrolls and includes the verses from Numbers chapter 5 verses 24 through 26. Tragically, Josiah's story concludes with his death at the hands of Pharaoh Necho of Egypt, also known as Necho II. Assyria's fall to Babylon introduces Babylonian interference in Judah's politics. 3 of Josiah's sons, along with 1 grandson, rule before the destruction of Jerusalem and the first temple by King Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon in 586 BC. The last high priest of the first temple is Sariah, Hilkiah's grandson, and prominent prophets Jeremiah and Ezekiel, who are also priests, play key roles during this period. Following the Babylonian exile, initiated by Nebuchadnezzar, the kingdom of Babylon is conquered by Cyrus the Great of Persia. Cyrus permits the exiled Jews to return to Jerusalem, authorizing the reconstruction of the temple in Judea. The Babylonian and Persian periods witness the composition of the majority of the Hebrew Bible. The lower right section of the chart outlines a timeline, indicating the probable periods when each book was written, according to contemporary critical scholarship. Returning to the family tree, Sheshbazzar, son of King Jeconiah, governs the first wave of returnees, while Joshua, Sariah's grandson, becomes the inaugural high priest of the Second Temple. Zerubbabel, mentioned as a governor leading the second wave, is either the son of Shealtiel or Pedaiah, both sons of Jeconiah. The subsequent waves of returnees, led by Ezra and Nehemiah, appointed by Persian King Artaxerxes I, contribute to the reconstruction efforts. Esther's placement is complex as it features a Persian king named Ahasuerus, not aligning with any known kings of Persia. However, Ahasuerus is commonly identified as Xerxes I. This marks the conclusion of the Hebrew Bible, referred to by Christians as the Old Testament. We then transition into the Intertestamental Period, a phase we can learn about through historical and extra-biblical sources. The Intertestamental Period is the period in between the Old and New Testaments. Notably, the Persians succumbed to the renowned Greco-Macedonian conqueror Alexander the Great. Following his demise, his generals vie for control, leading to the division of the empire into four primary parts. Two dominant dynasties emerge, tracing their lineage back to Ptolemy I and Seleucus I. Initially, the Ptolemies, based in Egypt, governed Judea, but later, control shifts to the Seleucids based in Syria. Jewish sources provide a roster of high priests from Joshua to the Maccabean revolt. This revolt is incited by King Antiochus IV of the Seleucid Empire, who disrupts traditional Jewish sacrifices, substituting them with offerings to the Greek deity Zeus. Moreover, the Hasmonean dynasty is eventually succeeded by the Herodian dynasty, with Herod the Great marrying one of the final Hasmonean princesses. This transition results in the separation of the monarchy and the high priesthood, with high priests now appointed to their positions rather than inheriting them. During the reign of Herod the Great, Jesus is born. The New Testament indicates a familial connection between Jesus and another preacher, John the Baptist, through their mothers, Mary and Elizabeth. In Catholic tradition, Mary's mother is believed to be named Anne, and it is presumed that Anne and Elizabeth's mother were sisters, establishing Mary and Elizabeth as first cousins and Jesus and John the Baptist as second cousins. Genealogically, the New Testament provides more information about Jesus' adoptive father, Joseph. According to the Gospel of Matthew, Joseph is the son of Jacob, while the Gospel of Luke states that Joseph is the son of Heli. Distinct ancestral lines are presented for Jesus in the Gospel of Matthew and the Gospel of Luke, leading many Christians to infer that one line corresponds to Mary's lineage. Typically, Luke's narrative is considered to reflect Mary's ancestry, while Matthew's is seen as based on Joseph's, although some argue for the opposite perspective. In both accounts, Jesus' genealogy traces back to Zerubbabel. Notably, Matthew includes half as many names between Zerubbabel and Jesus compared to Luke, suggesting potential omissions by Matthew, who is known to skip generations in his genealogy, such as Ahaziah, Josh, and Amaziah, jumping directly from Jehoram to Isaiah. This stylistic choice allows Matthew to organize his list into 3 sets of 14 names. Furthermore, Matthew replaces Asa with Asaph and Aman with Amos, likely for stylistic reasons, possibly as nods to the prophetic and literary sections of the Hebrew Bible. Luke, on the contrary, introduces an entirely different set of names between David and Zerubbabel. While Matthew traces Jesus' descent from David through Solomon and the subsequent kings of Judah, Luke presents a lineage from a lesser-known son of David named Nathan, followed by additional unfamiliar names. Additionally, Luke inserts an extra generation between Hezron and Amminadab and another between Arphaxad and Salah. This stylistic decision, akin to Matthew's, may contribute to the coherence of the narratives. Luke's genealogy consists of 77 names, a significant number in biblical symbolism, 7 times 11. Alas, we have examined the comprehensive family tree detailed in the Bible, spanning from the origins with Adam and Eve to the era of Jesus.